the cool show. The first of which isn't a total post-event recap. It's Brody in the spare room today, followed by Chris and Connor dancing like he does, leaning back on his chair and coming out with more outlandish comments that don't really make any sense.
It's nasty.
Kid's nasty, fair play. But first things first, we've got a quick episode today, considering as there is a impromptu EEG schedule, which two of these lads have got to get off to later on to worry about. So we've got to get onto that bit first of all. But first things first, on the agenda, we're talking about organisation closures. Obviously, we covered this a little bit in the 1K show yesterday, and myself and Connor have already given pretty hot takes on it in the Rummy Boys show. But we still have two people here who haven't really given a fucking damn about it. And just so we know, just so we're all here in the chat, of course, we are taking questions from chat. We'll take them towards the end. We'll have about 10 minutes of questions if we can kind of time it right. So if you guys have any questions, please throw them towards us and we'll get them in. We'll kind of stockpile them and go through them at the end. Subs get special priority if we run out of time. So if you're a sub, you get priority in questions. Anyway, moving on. So, first things first, org closures. Two orgs, big orgs have closed this week, boys. University and Peak Home, both of which have gone. Peak, obviously, for different reasons to University from what we now know, or what we now speculate at the very least. What do we think about both these orgs closing? What do we think about the climate of the esports space as a whole right now with the coronavirus and money being in short supply?
Coronavirus!
Don't care in it. I mean,
don't care.
Don't care. I'm not gonna say it. Like,
not on your radar.
No, right, I said it on Brummy Boys, and it's good that they're closed.
You think it's good?
It's just like it's two more esports orgs that weren't really doing all that much in terms of sort of like look, right. I'm not gonna. They weren't. I'm not gonna lie. Like University and Peak. I mean, to be fair, they supported the amateur esports scene, the amateur Call of Duty scene quite a bit in terms of like they've always pretty much had a team. In EEG and VAL and the leagues, whatever they were, but beyond that, I mean, like I don't know,
because people weren't really in COD. That was like CS:GO and League, you know what I mean?
Yeah. They only dabbled their toes, I think, in COD every so often. So for me personally,
yeah, not too bothered about it. Don't think it's too much of a loss to the scene as a whole.
No. Especially with what we know in terms of
I will agree
what's happened.
I think neither of those orgs are really contributing massive amounts of things to the space. Like, there's obviously organizations out there, like Singularity, for example, as an organization who contribute big things overall, not just to their team, but to the space, and like have a profound impact. I will say that, University Peak never really cultivated anything for me in the AM scene besides just being two other organizations. Want to look at it critically. Chris, you got any other takes, or are you kind of in agreement?
No, I'm in agreement. In all honesty, I've never really heard of either one of them at like a big enough level for it to matter. They've never really done anything to really stand out amongst the crowd of the amateur organizations. Peak, I've known they've been about since Advanced Warfare, I believe. I remember casting over them on a few of their events. But yeah, as I said, nothing really to coming of them. So
yeah.
I mean, if the time's right for them, then the time's right for them. It is what it is at the end of the day. And with the current climate, with the way that Call of Duty is, it's probably best to do it now before you invest all your money into a bottomless pit.
I will say, though, that on the topic of the organisation owners who are part of both those organisations, I think it's a pretty good move for them both, considering. Obviously, big respect to Canny. I know that he's has been one of the kind of more ethical org owners, because there's obviously a lot of fucking cunts in this scene at org owning level who just swindle people out of money. Yeah, fuck there are. I mean, just look at Davey, for an example. But, like... just...
Davey, Danny... Oh, come on.
Yeah, look at all the people who swindle people out of money, owe people money, all that kind of stuff. Just generally not great people. And then you've got people like Canny, who I've never seen any drama, generally just cultivates his organisation and the people within it, looking at it at a reasonable level. And then you've got the same thing going with kind of Shep, really. As much as he gets in petty drama on Twitter sometimes, not too worried about that. So when it comes to...
for me...
Oh, go on then.
It was like... If anyone was going to close, I would have wanted the University to close. Like... I would have liked Peak to stay open, because I feel like...
Well, it's greener pastures for Canny now. Up to Busendi, that's pretty good.
I mean, he's gone to there, so it's worked out for him. But I think as a whole, like, with what they was doing, like, in the League of Legends scene as well, and, like, there was quite dominant in the CSGO scene as well. I would have liked to see that carry on, perform further, maybe get some more content creation out regarding those two esports that was heavily involved in, and then see them possibly step into COD if it was worth their time. But I don't know, I feel like Peak was, like... I don't know. I just thought it was a good org. I feel like they had a great structure, but from what I know, well, the opposing issue was financial reasons, which is you can never stop that. You can never ever stop that. So that is what it is in its own. But I think for me, it was like I noticed more of Peak than I did University. So I think for Shep, it's a very good move for what he's done, considering where we think he's going.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to see Peak stay open, but each of their own at the end of the day.
It's like there's a point for me when you're running any. I mean, I'm not an amateur esports organizer, right? There is a point where you kind of like, where are you going with an esports org, right? I mean, there has to be an end goal.
You reach
for me
a fork
personally,
in the road, don't you?
Yeah, it's like, for me personally, I look at University and Peak, and I agree. I think they're very different organizations, but it's like they both have to have an end goal of, well, we want to become professional esports organizations. And at the end of the day, if that's not going to happen, is there any point? That's kind of like what I would personally say. It's like you're just running an org for the sake of running an org. But maybe there is a hole now where Peak once was. But we'll see. Obviously, there's always new esports organizations that come forward, cowboy esports owners that want to just put money into esports and then dip when they feel like they've had enough. So no doubt that there'll definitely be no shortage of esports organizations coming forward over the next few months.
Yeah, I actually think there's going to be, like me and Connor were discussing on Running Boys, there's going to be a plethora of orgs closing at the moment due to just lack of financial backing because of Corona.
Or like at least temporarily, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know about that.
I think it depends on the move they make as well.
Yeah, I suppose what happens after, like where they go with it.
But are you looking to merge? Are you looking to just sort of like put it on the brink and just leave it for a bit? Like, do you plan to revisit it? Do you plan to join somewhere else but keep that there? Do you know what I mean? Like, it depends on how they go about it with the org as well.
Well, if they were smart about it, they'd be thinking about not even closing it at all and thinking about branding themselves a little bit better to be able to keep people with their online content right now. You know, so what, you can't, keep the money coming in from your main source. So you think about it in another way.
Get another source of income, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, look at us, for example. I mean, I'm not fucking earning anything right now because I'm a uni student, but right now, Beyond the Call is doing really well in terms of actual financial gain, which is something we weren't expecting. It's been a bit of a blow up this week since the schedule started to flood in. But we're doing really well because we have kind of online content. And the organizations really, we've been saying it for a lot of time, me and Chris especially have been kind of touting this, is that content's the future. Content's where you need to be for an organization. And a lot of these orgs, like University, just kind of were just sitting in different esports and hoping that their results would speak for the org. You need to kind of be having something to sell sponsors for, I suppose. So I hope that improves with Shep potentially moving to IDOS, which is what we're seeing next, or ADOS, which is what we'll talk about next. We'll keep the show rolling. We don't want to spend too long talking about that. It's already old territory. We've spoken about it at length before, especially on yesterday's 1K show. So we'll move on to ADOS, EIDOSGG. This is a new super organization, from what we can understand, that is made from the amalgamation of 4 previous organizations, that being Cryptic Gaming, Team Descend, which I'm just guessing is just Randall, just going to be Shep from Diversity, and also OBN, which is likely it's not just Stubbsy.
Yeah, I was gonna say you say it's 4 organizations,
but it's really just 4 people.
It's really just 4 dead bodies that just rising from the ashes and forming this one new org. I mean, let's be honest, like. Sorry. Right.
It's a dead body.
He's just fucked 4 people that we've given plaudits to.
I'll try. I'll try and be nicer about it. It's 4 organizations that haven't really done anything in the past few months, or anything of note, I will say.
Right.
It's fair to say. And they're coming together because it's beneficial to them to do so. It's much better if you have a bigger staff team that you can hand off multiple jobs to, as long as you're not overpaying people, or as long as you're not having 20 staff members that are all on fucking God knows how much a month just for doing the smallest shit. It's beneficial, I think, for those organizations who maybe want to get back into it, especially in such a crowded esports scene where there's already so many esports organizations that are fighting for the same space. It's like, well, hang on, if we're all going to revive, why don't we just do it under one umbrella?
Yeah, I suppose that's probably the best way of looking at it. I think with everybody who's involved in the project, it's likely to be somewhat of a... Oh, hello. Did Brody die?
Yeah.
I thought maybe dead.
No. He's back. You good?
Oh, sorry, boys. Yeah, it's disconnected real quick. Hang on.
Nice.
There we go.
Welcome back.
There we go.
So what was I saying? I think with everyone involved, it's likely as not to be a pretty quick success. Whether the thing is, with all these organizations, all of them, or all the people who have previously been involved in these organizations, have always shown a habit of peaking and troughing, and then troughing really fucking hard, and then giving up. Is what I've seen a lot of times. I mean, OBN's probably the best example of this. I mean, Stubbsy is fucking up and down like a yo-yo with all the organizations that he's into and how far he's into them. Like, I've got massive respect to Stubbsy, but there's a point in time where you've just got to realize that maybe you just want to stick with one place for more than 6 months. It's the same thing as well. Like, Shep is renowned for being like very active in ideas for a period of time and then kind of dropping off when things start to go tits up or something goes wrong. So it's basically on IHNK, I think, to be the reins behind this one. I think their branding is sick. I think the way they're announcing stuff is going to be a little bit peculiar. They want to try and drag things out and make it like a more of a long-term announcement thing. So I don't know when the official launch date for this org is going to be or what the MO for the org is. Well, I know that was the branding announcement, but like when everything's going to kick off, when it's going to become
I mean, that's what, like...
What's the MO is my point. Like, what's the mission objective?
I mean, like, it's confusing. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I like... We had this discussion on the 1K show yesterday. Chris, you weren't here for this segment. But, like, you're talking about, as you say, George, an organization that's being announced in slow, methodical parts. Like, even you're immediately confusing people, in my opinion. Like, I think I mean, I know Chris is easily confused, but like, you're immediately confusing Chris, who is I
don't know what day
this is
anymore.
the announcement. This is the launch of the organization when it's just you're announcing the branding. You know, so. I like the idea, but at the same time, you kind of have to be very careful about the way in which you go about it. Like,
yeah, you can overhype something for too long, and then it becomes like unexciting.
Yeah, I think I gave that to HNK yesterday. I said like the way you've been hyping it up onto it, everybody's been tweeting about it. Like everybody's wondering what the hell's going to happen, what's going on, who's involved, where you're going with it. But it's like, as I said, as we said yesterday, the fact that they just announced the video, put like 2 people in it, so we know who they're looking to work with or are working with. It's like, I don't care about that at the moment. I want to know, like, you're putting 4 orgs in there, but you've still got Stubbsy and Shep tweeting like, "Oh, good luck." Like,
he's not a part of it. It's obvious you're a part of it.
Your logo's there. There. Like, do you think this is, bro?
Their logo reminds me of the Team Secret one. And Ramsey, you're fucking blind. It's nothing like it.
To answer your question, Mikey, as well, do you think they should have put it on hold until the events come back? Definitely
why
not.
would they? Why would they?
There's so much traction on the internet right now because of Twitter and stuff. Why would you not?
Quite clearly, it's like content focused as well. I mean, they've got who was it? Randall and
Looty.
And Looty, who is just like that. Their whole personas are just content. They're not. It's not esports based. Yeah, it's like, you know, why would you bother? It has nothing to do with LAN events, especially when a lot of the content that's going to happen now is going to be online, and it is so much fucking cheaper for you to pay entry into shit online than it is on LAN, because on LAN you're going to have to fund teams in terms of hotels, in terms of their travel to the events. Jerseys. Online, all you need to do is just the team. Yeah, all you need to do is team pass online, give them a fucking webcam, boom, fucking stream. That's it. That's how you run.
Is the fact they've done what most orgs still haven't and still won't do. Straight away, they've attacked such a face person brand, you know what I mean? Like, gone for Looty straight away. Like, he is such a he is a brand.
Wouldn't it be fucking hilarious, though, if they didn't actually end up working with him? Like, what a fucking fumble.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's partnered with Scuff at the moment, isn't he, Looty? So he's got that to be concerned about. So I will say one thing in terms of this ADOS branding, or IDOS, or ADOS. I don't know. In terms of this branding, I will say they have to be very careful about the market they're going for, in my opinion. Now, I'm no expert, but like, I feel like the Cryptic, the sort of all of these brands that have joined up to this organization, they are bygone brands. They're not brands that really, like, nowadays have any relevance, especially in the Call of Duty scene, in my opinion. Like, they just don't. And I think they have to be very careful about overestimating their pool. Because cool, you've got great personalities. You've got Looty, you've got Copley, who even Copley isn't that big of a personality, I don't think, nowadays. I just think you have to be kind of careful about, you know, overestimating how much of a sort of a pull you actually have as an organization.
I mean, you got to think as well, there's a lot of new people in the scene at the moment who don't know who Cryptic are, who don't know who Team Descend were. Randall hasn't been relevant for a hot minute. And like you got to imagine that there's a lot of people who don't know who these people are, so therefore don't give a fuck about this new org opening. I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on and stop our speculating because, quite frankly, it's not going to get us very far at this point in time. We don't have enough information about it. We'll move on to stuff we do know stuff about, which is the 1K results. So if anyone has the bracket, which I do, we can run down from top to finish. We can start with who won the event. Obviously, no singularity in the 1K this week, so bear that in mind. We're going to be ragging on a lot of players here, so you might want to stick around to see if we're going to shit on anyone that you care about. But the winners of the 1K are the X-Team War, aka Harry Potter's broom. They ended up winning with Harry, so the loss of Nasty not affecting them too much. Obviously, Connor knows, yeah, and we already know what Connor's take on Harry is. We spoke a little bit. we already know. But we're gonna speak about it again because obviously we had our reservations yesterday that Harry wasn't really the same player that Nasty wasn't going to be able to bring the same level of performance to the team that Nasty did. And Chris, I want to start off with you because Team War, you know a lot of those guys. You've casted over them for a number of years. So what do you think that Harry's role in this team as a very new player to the 18+ scene is going to be for mixing in with his old guard?
Well, firstly, I think picking up Harry was actually a very good, smart move on their behalf. They've obviously done a little bit of research because he seemed to have slotted in quite nicely. I mean, they won the 1K, which is fantastic in itself, but to do so without dropping a single map all day is actually incredible. So the fact that they've come out, they've done this, really well done to them. Like that's not an easy feat to do. Obviously, Singularity not making obviously the 1K because they're in America. But
they even got semis in the American though, the Singularity. Just as a by the way, I think so. Yeah.
Good lord, fair play to them. They're a different beast. But Team War, really well played, and Harry just sits so well into that team right now. He just does everything that they don't want to do. The rest of the team doesn't want to do, and it works beautifully.
Brody, you got anything to say on the Harry comments?
I mean, to be honest, like it's kind of like an extension of what we said. So we'll do a little plug right now. If you guys are just
What?
I can't hear Brody.
Can't hear me.
We can.
Just carry on. I don't care what
Connor,
it says anyway.
Your Discord is well and truly fucked.
Your camera keeps cutting in and out as well, Mez.
That's just my connection. I'm on Wi-Fi.
No, Mez is, not you.
Oh, Mez is. Oh, that's all right then. I mean, I'm on Wi-Fi. Mine is shit. Anyway, as I was saying, I mean, it's kind of like an extension of what we said yesterday. And again, guys, if you don't watch it, every Saturday we do the 1K show, so you'll see a lot of more in-depth analysis than what you're going to see here on the Beyond the Call show. That being said, it's like we said, discussed yesterday, at the end of the day, Harry is a very, very good player. Very, very good. And, there's a reason that at the end of the day, the War picked him up. You're not going to replace Nasty, and I don't think he is a direct replacement for Nasty, but I still think, in terms of making sure that War is still on top of the pile, Harry's the right kind of player to go with, and I think he fits the squad like a glove.
Mez, you got any thoughts on Harry, except for the ones that you voiced yesterday, which were pretty concise as it is?
He's just fucking nasty, bro.
All right.
I've got nothing to say on him. He's a quality guy. Well, not even a guy, I don't know him, but he's a quality player, man. Like, I think Chris said it best, like, he just slots into that team so well with his position and his play style. And it just works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no fault on it. Like, it just works. And the kid is fucking nasty.
I think it's a marked step up from where we've seen him in times that we've commentated over him, Brody.
100%.
Harry he's kind of never really wanted.
He's been on the path.
He never really wanted a youth league or anything either, and it was never really showed signs of this kind of level of ascendancy. But he seems to have hit it this year
until the end of Black Ops 4.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm very happy for him. I think he's doing fantastic work. And I think with this roster, I think with the old guard there as well, I think obviously, like you mentioned, he's not a straight swap for Nasty. He's not going to be an instant fit in the team just in Nasty's place. I think you are going to have to revamp some of the way the team plays, maybe a role swap on one or two of the players. And I think as a result of that, you kind of have to have that old guard in Dave and PT and Vortex and co who know how to kind of manipulate these parts around. And I think that's what makes the team work so well. I think Harry, like you mentioned, is a pretty welcome addition to this roster. I think he's going to do great things. I think the roster's going to work really well. So we'll move on to who they played against in the grand final, which was the Royal Ravens side. Obviously, this side is looking starkly different to what they did in the first time that we saw this team formed. They now have Henry playing after they dropped Shawnee, and they also have now got Linny from the former Train Hard roster. And they obviously came up against this Team War side in the grand final. They didn't win a map, sadly for them, but they got all the way there, coming up in a few close games against Elitist and Afro's side just in the round before this in the semi-finals. We'll get to them later. But what do we think about the Royal Ravens? Because for me, I think this team is looking markedly better with Henry in the roster. I think having Shawnee in the team was pretty much the same problem that War were facing when they had Moose. It was a little too many assault rifle players for a meta that didn't suit that playstyle, and I think getting Henry in, getting Linny in is a really big steroid to the sub power of this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a remarkably different team that we've seen over the course of the last few months. Obviously, now most of these amateur sides are starting to develop their teams to be more based around the online scene, obviously, because everything now
Henry's
being
router.
online.
Henry is the ultimate
exactly.
online.
So, bringing Henry in with his aggression as it is was a fantastic pickup, and now everything being online makes it even better for them because that allows them now to push on towards these topper placements, which we expected them to be at the start of the season, but they'd had fallen short towards like the top 4 really instead of the top 2 where they should really be as an academy team. But yeah, Henry coming in, Linny as well, who done bits in Black Ops 4, well, the end of Black Ops 4, to just come straight in, and yeah, it works really well for them right now. They just need a little bit of time to gel, to get things moving properly, and to work on just a few little key things. And yeah, they should be up there once again.
Any opinions, Brody, on the?
I think it's very, very important to look at this Royal Ravens Academy roster and just be, take it with a pinch of salt because, comparing it to the Train Hard roster, which we'll ultimately get to later. At the end of the day, they had an incredible start with their roster. They went third at Paris. They came into the 2Ks from top 8 to top 4 to first, and then they had a shit fucking 1K this week. They did awfully. At the end of the day, you kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt. This Royal Ravens Academy roster is going to have to be given a bit of time to gel. That being said, I think for the Royal Ravens, again, every change that the top 4 teams make, it is again to get on top of the top 4. And I still am not convinced that this Royal Ravens Academy side with Henry is going to be the number 1 team in Europe outside of Singularity, who are, of course, technically not in Europe right now. That's how I personally view it. I don't really know what the Royal Ravens Academy can actually do because they did get rid of their weakest link. Like, in my opinion, absolutely. I mean, I could tell right from the start of the season what their biggest problem was going to be, and they fixed it. Like, they did. They fixed it a few weeks in pretty well. But I do think Henry is a good addition to the squad, and as we did point out a little bit, they have moved to online quite well with the addition of Henry, who, again, his router is very nice, has been noted by many players. So we'll see how the Royal Ravens Academy get on over the course of the season. There are still a few weeks left of 1Ks before I think we'll get a new batch anyway. I mean, but yeah, we'll see. I don't think, though, that they're going to get better than War anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you simply for the reason is I don't really know where this team goes from here. Like, they've already, Henry's a very kind of plug and play player, and I don't think there's a lot of ways that you can make him a very different kind of player to what he is. I think Linny is obviously a very versatile guy. I think he's probably the most manipulable player on this team to make him play any kind of role that you need him to, as long as it doesn't involve putting an assault rifle in his hands. And I just, like you mentioned, again, I don't know what this team needs to do to become top 1. I don't know who needs to go, maybe who needs to be improved upon, maybe who needs to be switched out. Like, is there a glaring weakness in this team that you can see? Maybe anyone, Nolson or Weeman maybe, or Madcat, that might be moved out the roster in order to get them into top 1, or are they just destined to be the top 3 team?
It depends.
I think they just need more time to gel.
You think they just need more time? Or you think they can become better than Singularity?
See, with that, it's hard to say because that all comes down to me, who can play better on the day, and it always has been that because you see it so back and forth so many times. Like, if one person has a bad map, the team will fumble, and it's just how it happens at this level. Like, it's just how it goes. It's simply as that. So I think it goes to, if they have enough gel time, I think they can. It's hard to say, but I think they can get there, yeah. But I think it takes a lot more than what they're doing now. And, I mean, it's fairly new as well, so...
I think it needs a lot more from Henry myself. I think Henry's going to have to be the X factor.
Agreed. You're just going to need time to gel together. And another team that brings on to the next point for that is Elitist. I'm not sold on that roster whatsoever.
Okay, so we'll skip a few rounds then. If Connor's going to fucking push us that way, you cunt.
That's Elitist.
We'll just go straight over Train Hard and straight over Afro's team and straight into Elitist. Okay, so well, Elitist then, we were actually speaking about them at length yesterday on the 1K show. I think we all had an opinion on what this team is really going with now. Obviously, they were the team that got gutted They were gutted by the Team War side. They no longer have their star man in Harry. They replaced him with someone. Give me a refresher course, please. Who did they replace him with?
Genesis.
Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably why I needed a refresher course because it has been thoroughly underwhelming. Although they did take Royal
sad.
Ravens pretty well in their match, obviously went all the way to Game 5, and then they got absolutely hard smacked in the Game 5. I think the thing to note about this elitist side is that Aroma now is in my eyes the best player in the team. I think he, as the assault rifle player, is pretty talented. I think everything's great for him. I'm concerned about where this team goes from now, though, because they don't have anyone who really is a driving force in the team. They don't have anyone who's really like a big slayer. They don't have anyone, in my eyes, who can play make. They're just a kind of very stable team. They'll play the same way pretty much every time you play them, and they're pretty methodical with that as well. I don't know where their ceiling is, but I have a feeling it's not very high.
Not with a roster like that.
And you haven't got
to be honest. Like, that's the way I see it. I think, like, I completely agree. Like, the ceiling with a roster like that is not going to be very high at the end of the day. I don't see them making any 1 or 2 changes that will make them the best team in the game. I think elitists definitely are not aiming for that at the moment anyway. Like, obviously, everyone's aiming to win. That's always going to be at the forefront of your mind. Like, I'm not aiming for a second or a third or a fourth. I'm aiming to win. But I think realistically speaking, elitists, their next goal, as it has been, I think, for the past few months, is to break into that top 4.
Right.
As a team that weren't happy with top 6 at London, they've still got a few changes to make, in my opinion. Again, I'm still not convinced on Pixie. I think, what Kurt said in the chat yesterday when we were doing the 1K show is that he's a little bit too shy at the moment and isn't playing fully out of his shell. I think you need a player like that to go off. Harry was that player, in my opinion. And I think, having a player that can just go off and run at the other team and just go in, basically, balls deep, no worries, no stress. You need a player like that. And I don't necessarily believe that they have that, especially when you're replacing Harry with Genesis. And to me,
and you've already
Genesis
replaced
is not that
Chaxter
player.
with Hixie.
Yeah, like I don't think Genesis is a like terrible player by any means. I just don't think he's the same player as Harry.
Right, Connor, then we'll go to you before we go to Chris. What do you think about this team elitist roster, considering as you were the one who brought it up? You are not convinced by them, obviously, like you've mentioned. The rest of us are still pretty speculative, but what for you is the glaring weakness of this side?
Respawn, majorly.
Yeah, okay,
every single respawn we watched yesterday, it was shaky. And then when they got dominated, 236 to 43 or some whatever it was, on the domination on
Gunrunner, wasn't it? Versus Ravens. Yeah.
It's like, how? But do you know what I mean? Like, how can you get beat that bad?
It was fucking hot. I've not seen a loss that bad on domination this entire year.
A team like that as well, with the players that are on there. And then, even throughout the course of the 1K, their respawns just looked shaky. Not in the early rounds, because it was quite free rounds. But later on, when they started to get the challenges in, the respawns were just really shaky. Hard point domination. It was one hard point. We've seen them completely not even rotate.
Oh, that was
the map that they lost by a few points.
That was map number 1 of that series, I believe.
It was Ramaza, weren't it?
Yeah,
they just
thought rotation isn't fucking important.
Yeah. They got very lucky. There was no rotation. They're all just sitting in.
Oh no, sorry. This was the map they won. Actually, they won that Ramaza map, and it was map 4.
Oh yes, that's the map that was
they won it by a lucky break. Yeah,
because they had to go to bridge again, didn't they?
Yeah. No, they had to go to P5 again. I think. Yeah,
you shouldn't have to.
They had to go to bridge again.
Take that battle.
Trenches. But it's how are you doing that? And it shouldn't be that shaky. Where's the communication? Where's the team leader? What's going on?
That's actually a really good fucking point, actually, that Connor's just brought up there. Who is the leader of this team?
Who?
I mean, I would say it's probably Aroma from what I've seen, but I don't think Aroma's a leadership type person, in my opinion.
I don't think he's the big brain times, is he?
No, I would have. But before Chaxter got removed from the roster, I would have said it was probably Chaxter because Chaxter's a fucking loud guy.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know. I guess this would be a conversation that I'd probably have to have with elitists and talk to them about their concerns at the moment. I presume they will have quite a lot, but I'm sure they'll get through it. But I definitely think maybe someone taking the reins might be the solution to the problem.
All right, then, Chris, we'll end this discussion on elitists with you. Obviously, the roster you're pretty familiar with. We've seen them a couple of times before across the course of London and now Paris, and, of course, with this 1K placement. It was a bit of a rocky road. Of course, they ended up coming up against Ravens and losing in Game 5. But what do you think about them as a team overall with their new changes? Like we've been talking about, they're pretty quiet, not very pretty consistent, but not high ceiling. Do you tend to agree with that, or have you got anything that you think can be a change for this roster that makes them better?
Well, leadership obviously being a big key point that I just brought up. That was one of the things that was going through my mind. Listening and watching them yesterday, I didn't really hear the communication being on that sort of level. It was just a bit of like a flurry amongst themselves. It wasn't anything that was clear, decisive, and above all, there was no confidence. They were going into gunfights and they didn't really expect to win them, except for Aroma. Now he's just something else with that AR in hand. Like he has a fantastic ability to be able to be in the right position at the right time, aiming in the right locations. And I think, somebody needs to step up now and take the reins. They need to start to build something because Elitas, they've been thereabouts for the top 6 for the vast majority of the season so far. But now they're starting to slip away with all these roster changes happening. Now they're bringing in these players, which for me, they haven't really proven themselves. But are they just grabbing them because they're available? Or are they grabbing them because they're actually, fit into this team? Because I don't think they do. I think they're just grabbing them because they're there. They just think that player will do, even though they're not really looking into what they need for a team and then building it from there. They're looking and saying, well, he's a player that does that sort of thing. Just get him in instead of thinking bigger picture.
Right, so well, speaking of ham-fisted rosters that kind of have been cobbled together of players that are just available at the time, we'll move on to Afro's team, which is the former Electrify roster. It's undergone some pretty major changes since we've seen it before, and it's now become a bit of a team which has almost removed a lot of the veterans from the roster in preference of these young guns. Connor, we'll come to you first because obviously you're a big Afro fan. The roster, just for those of you who don't know, is Fusion's BB Connor, Disarray now, Afro, and Gizmo. So what do you think of this one, Connor? Obviously they did pretty well here getting into the semi-finals, falling to Team War. Obviously could have made their way into the finals, but by all means it was a good series from what I'm aware of. And what do you think of the team now that they've made these changes?
I think if that team sticks, that team works together, and that team puts in the effort to actually scrim and learn how to actually be better as a 5, not individually as well, that will potentially be a very contending team for championship. And I say that with chest. Like, I think that roster.
You have faith in this roster,
majorly. I think that roster's nasty. Not even just like their individual skill, because we all know they all have it. Like looking at Gizmo as well, and the year Afro had last year, and so far what he's accomplished this year. Yeah, he's not won anything, but he's majorly took a step. Do you know what I mean? He's gone from Scan and CD and co to like Gizmo and co. Like it is a step. Like that's no disrespect to those guys because we all think CD's a phenomenal player as well. But it's like I think in the terms of Afro, he really outshined in Black Ops 4, and I think is well deserved of this chance, and he's still proving that he is.
Okay then. So we think Connor's convinced that this can be a championship contending team. Then I myself am not so convinced, but I'll reserve those opinions for the end of this conversation. Chris, we'll come to you. What do you think about this roster? Do you think that they're a championship contending team now they've made these changes?
No. I think this team is a stepping stone, basically, for a lot of these players. They're seeing this as an opportunity to play alongside some like-minded players who can put them in within the top 6 of the most online tournaments, but they're seeing this as an opportunity to then grow and move on elsewhere. They're not going to stick around for long. As soon as another better offer comes along, you can bet your bottom dollar they're gone. I can see the likes of Afro going, definitely.
What better team could come along?
What better thing? There could be
War
Ravens,
Ravens, War.
Okay, no, you're talking changes. I thought you were talking like a whole new team.
Oh no. So they'll move on. Afro, I think he can certainly do a step up. He has stepped up in himself, as Connor has said. You can see it in his gameplay. He is evolving as a player himself, but it's whether it's enough of an evolution for him to be able to push up into those top echelons. I don't think it's enough for him. I think really Gizmo is that one standout player on that lineup right now that you're looking at thinking, you know what, give him a couple more months, and I reckon he could be pushing for that top 2 easy.
Okay then. No, you're fine, Brody. I think you're fine. Can you not see us? I think he's dead.
Yeah, he's gone again.
I can't hear him anyway, so
see if it works now. Brody, you back?
Is he there?
I don't know. Is he dead?
I can't hear him.
I can't hear him.
No. Rest
Oh,
in peace.
there you go.
Regardless, while he's
Oh.
fixing that,
There you go. Sorry,
is
guys.
it back?
Okay,
Yeah,
Brody, go on.
Wi-Fi just crashed.
Your opinions on the Afro roster, the Afro moves, and all that business, just quickly.
If they stay together, there'll be a roster that struggles with leadership, in my opinion. Like, they're very, very like-minded players. They're all around the same age. None of them really have that much experience in terms of being in the upper echelons of amateur Call of Duty. They're going to come into some real problems, in my opinion. That being said, I don't think this roster sticks for that long anyway. As Chris said, this is a stepping stone roster. Some of these players, this is their chance to prove themselves. If anything, these guys will top out at top 4. And even then, I think that's a stretch. I think, if anything, this is just a chance for them to prove themselves and go on to something better.
I will say about this roster, I think they are one of the most mechanically gifted teams that there is. All the players are bonkers in their own right.
Why am I having Wi-Fi issues?
The problem being is that the team is just not going to work. It's got too many star players that are going to completely spoil the broth. You're going to have to wait for Brady to come back here, and I'll readjust the cams after. But this team is quite frankly just one of these teams that's going to be a stepping stone, like you say. I think these players are going to get poached by bigger rosters when they start to have issues later on in the year. And we've still got time to go. I mean, it's only March. The next game's going to come out in probably late October, early November.
Well, it depends.
Yeah, even that depends. But so there's still time for these players to get poached. I think they're a really mechanically gifted roster. I think they've got like cracking aimers, but they're just not going to be like spellbinding. I don't see a world in which these guys are like just destroying everyone all the time. I think they have like a series in which they just all pop off and they just upset like War or something. But I don't see a series. I don't see a world in which
going to have to be like a whole 5-man and individual pop off though.
Yeah, I don't see a world in which this team wins an event or a 1K really, unless these two teams aren't in it. I don't know what's happening with Brody. Oh, never mind, he's back.
There you go. I'm on 4G now, so hopefully it doesn't cut out.
Okay, and the last, one of the last couple of teams we'll talk about then is a team that had a really shit week here. Brody, we mentioned them earlier. I'll start with you. Train hard, or in this case, as they were called in this tournament, Train Soft, and I think that couldn't be even, couldn't be a better name for them.
Fitted.
So Train Hard had a really shit performance, all things considered. They came up against this individually talented Afros team and ended up losing. What do we think about them? What do we think about the roster change? Obviously, we mentioned they've been going from strength to strength, but now it's a step back down the ladder into the quarterfinals this time.
In terms of Train Hard, I suppose it's a roster that is always going to run into problems. Again, you've got to consider there's a language barrier in the middle of the team. Like, these guys have still got to overcome all of those issues. That being said, it's kind of disappointing in a way that they improved so much from their formation to their first event to now, where we're basically seeing them drop out of top 8. All things considered, though, again, you got to consider the micro here. At the end of the day, they may or may not have just come across a roster that I think they got taken out by Afro's team, right?
Yeah.
That they maybe didn't expect them to be as good as they were, maybe just an underestimation. I think it would also take a little bit of looking at where they're going wrong in terms of the micro, in terms of, in match, in every single map, where are they going wrong? Where can they improve? Maybe they've got to do better rotations. Maybe they've got to do better at holding hills with the positioning. I think this is a very talented team. They can work past their issues rather well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they made some changes still in the next few weeks/month.
You think they become all French?
Yeah, I think, like, no offense to Keza and Defrag, I don't think there's anything wrong with them individually. I just think the roster would probably flourish more if they were to shoot a couple of players off BDS, because obviously the chemistry is a lot easier to work with if your roster is all speaking the same language that you do naturally.
Okay, Chris, we'll come to you because obviously Keza and Defrag, I don't know if you noticed this, but I want to pose this to you. Last night is what I saw, as these two players were both complaining pretty heavily on Twitter last night about their team's performance, really, and a lack of communication on hardpoint and stuff like that. So furthering into Brody's point, do we see this team going all French? Do we see Keza and Defrag leaving? Do we see them going off to greener pastures or maybe different pastures? What happens for you with this Train Hard side?
Yeah, I see Defrag leaving. Absolutely. He doesn't stick around in any one location for any long. And I think that is all down to him and himself. I think he's one of those players who is a bit arrogant, a bit cocky, and if he doesn't get things his way, then he'll just pack his bags and leave.
Right.
And I think that's what we're already starting to see with this Train Hard roster. With him complaining last night about the communication already, things are only going to get worse for him. He's, with having 3 French players on this lineup, I think the communication is never going to be absolutely on on point as he has expected it in the past. And so, therefore, I think this is already the first instance. I give it another week or two, and I think Defrag's off. Keza, he had been vocal last night, but it wasn't quite to the Defrag standard. But I could see him hanging on for a little while longer. But if they do pick up a player, then yeah, he'll be binned off as well. But yeah, again, this roster is just to fill a void for now, up until the point where, again, train hard, they can find somebody that can do the job and probably speak French.
See, I was pretty convinced by this roster when all things started, I'm not going to lie. When they did well at Paris and they kind of progressed further and looked pretty good in the 1Ks and were making their way steadily up. But this week's performance is a bit of a shock to the system, Connor. Do you think that the same is going to be true? Or do you think that these guys are going to stick and tough it out like professionals and maybe try and work with this multinational roster for a bit longer?
I think from what we've seen of the tweets last night that got very quickly deleted, if they was interpreted the way we thought they was interpreted, definitely not going to be sticking together. I think there's underlying issues going on that we're not shown potentially maybe on the stream. I'm guessing they had a big chat last night after their loss because you could tell a few of them was pretty pissed. I don't know. I think it just depends on their mindset, I feel. If they feel like they want to make it work, they're going to give it an attempt, right? If someone sits in that chat and says, listen, we can do this, we can make it work, I feel like if no one has their ego too high up, they will try and make it work. But for me, I just don't see it working anyway. Not anymore. Like I've not got such a great opinion on that squad no more.
You don't think they're good? I still think they've got the...
No, I think they're good. I'm never going to discredit their talents. But I think they're slowly slipping down, not up.
Maybe. I still think maybe this is a blip on the radar. I think we need one more week worth of data from the 1K next week to see where Train Hard really do stand as a team. If they have another below average or below par performance, I can definitely see changes being made as early as next week.
Where do they go? I mean, that's the question, right?
That is
like,
a really good question.
What happens with Keza and Defrag if we're right? If we say that this becomes an all French lineup, and
I don't
that's
think
sort of
those two players stay together.
lineup.
I think Keza.
Well, like where do they go? Like, what do they ship some players off war, or I mean, Defrag's certainly not getting back to the Royal Ravens Academy. That's not fucking happening.
No, not after all the shit that went down.
Like, I just think that this is the best option for those two players. It's kind of weird. It's like. There is no better options. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I feel like Keza's got to be kicking himself a little bit with the fact that he left Singularity at the start of the season. Like,
well,
this is.
In a way,
we don't know the politics behind that, but like, I think it's so hard for us to sit here and say that this roster splits up and they go their separate ways because it would it even have an effect at this point? I mean, like, because you can't just leave the roster without having a backup plan, without knowing really where you're going.
Yeah, you can't pull a Chaxter, really, and just leave leave, in quotation marks, the elitist side, and not really know where you're going next. He's obviously kind of landed somewhat on his feet, maybe? Probably not really.
No, he hasn't. I mean, he's been free agent for the last few weeks, so...
Yeah, so you can't pull a Chaxter. You're going to need to do something else. Anyway, we've got a little bit of time, probably like 5 to 10 minutes or so before these guys are going to go off and cast. If anyone's got any questions, pop them in chat. If we don't see any questions pop in, I guess we'll start the discussion on the Atlas Lions, the final team that I wanted to talk about. We look at Spain for the final team that we have in the bracket, really that's worthy of mention. Obviously, picking up Sucre, getting rid of Invidian. We've noted time and time again their attitude problems with Invidian that we've been told about. Sucre joined the roster, though. Seemed to be a pretty comfortable performance for them. They go Game 5 versus BDS, but that happens every week because of host wars. So what do we think about the side, the Spanish side, the top Spanish side? What do we think about them as a whole?
Float in bed.
Yeah, float in bed.
Float in bed, man.
Fuck me,
mate.
Time. Aladdin's elite.
You think
Aladdin is elite?
Are you sold on this roster? Do you think it's obviously it's better than the Invidian roster for now. It already shows signs of being better, but I'm not sold on it like making them. I think it like if you were to use a racing term for this, it improves them in time, but not a place.
I think I'll give them like. I'm 70 to 30 convinced on them.
Right.
Like I'm 70 to 30 convinced on them. I don't think that they're that convincing. Like they're not 100% like, oh my god, this is the roster. Like this can do it. But they are showing good signs. But then I want to take into consideration their host.
Right.
As well.
Yeah, it's online COD.
It's online COD, to be fair. And it is a Spanish team on online COD, so it does fuck the rest of the competition a little bit. I don't know. Sucre's obviously a better player, man for man, pound for pound, than Invidian.
What is that question?
Yeah,
Razor GG
it's
only today
famed being
thoughts.
weird
50%
again.
of them want to create a new org.
I don't know
mean,
who Razor GG are.
Considering you're arguing with them on the timeline about your Call of Duty match that is about to come up, I'm not really interested in any of yours.
I think if you're arguing with him on the timeline, the reason you're asking about us is because they're living in your head rent-free, fame. So probably time to sort that out, mate.
And according to Razor, you're about to get 3-0, so you want to make sure it ain't rent-free.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Who's going to be the sheep now, boys?
The Lions. And
anyway, moving on.
I don't know who Razor are.
Tal. Well, you're about to cast him, mate.
They're
Tal
close,
and
though.
that. I guess.
Yeah, they're close to hours ago.
Yeah, they'll have like a new walk sooner or later, I presume. Unless maybe it's just the
Unless they're joining ADOS as well. Fuck it out.
It's just gonna be it's gonna be like a Power Rangers, like a load of people.
It's like Mighty Morphin time.
All into one all. Yeah, in regards to Tal, I think they're a good team. Again, it's going to be kind of hard to see what they're going to be like on LAN when there are no LANs.
Yes.
So it's kind of like you always got to consider the fact that when we're even discussing them or BDS, it's always like, well, they've got these incredible hosts against the UK sides. Like, it's so hard to compare them. That being said, I do think, like, individually speaking, they're very, very talented. Like, Tal are a great team. We've noted before, even when they had Nvidian, that they were a pretty good squad. And I think now that they've got Sukri, it's a better team than it was before. So, I mean, it is literally the best of Spain's talent outside of the ones that currently sit inside the Pro League. Or the pros, or the Call of Duty League, and the under 18s, who are obviously not 18s, they can't play.
So it's the best of the available Spain talent, is what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I'd agree. I think, again, this team could be in the ascendancy, but I think they're one move away from that. I don't know who the move is, and I don't know who they bring in.
The genie on the lamp with the floating bed.
I don't think you get rid of Puni. Maybe Vortex has played on Spanish teams before, but they didn't obviously communicate in Spanish. So I'd maybe looking at that potentially again if he's in that space still, looking in that scene. If there are any Spaniards still out there who aren't in Pro League, like Methods is still out there, isn't he? Methods is sick.
I swear he's on a pro. I swear he's.
Are you sure?
I swear.
I thought he played with City for like 20 seconds.
Highly sure he's on a bench.
I swear he's on a bench. Yeah, I swear he's on the face.
No, I don't think he is. That's uni.
Toronto, maybe.
Yeah, I think.
Is that not Metals?
Metals is there, but yes. Oh my god, guys, we can't figure out where Method's sick is. Or is it just it's just Methods? But everyone calls him Method sick.
Yeah,
he's retired apparently.
Really?
I think he's called. Apparently, he's just retired.
Methods is not an ultra. I'm telling you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm not. Why are we saying he's on a pro team? He's not on a pro team. He was playing for Pushing not that long ago.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh,
yeah. So he's still out there, maybe. Rancor turns 18 in May.
Yeah, Methods isn't that good though. Apparently,
Rancor turns 18 in May. So
spoken to him.
Do you just take Rancor? When he turns 18?
No, because Rancor's not going to leave Vickle, is he?
When he turns 18? Why wouldn't you? Vickle doesn't want to Vickle has made it clear that he doesn't want to actually make this a career for him. If Rancor does, then why not?
Well, he's moving to America, so he wants to play in American challenges. But I suppose it depends really what happens. Like we've talked about Rancor as a hot prospect for Spanish Call of Duty. Maybe he reunites Buller. Who knows?
That would be nice. I don't think you get rid of Buller in this team either. I think he's fucking Donny.
Yeah, he's selfless. His stats may not show it, but he's a very good AR
Big
player.
props to Buller. Anyway, I think that's all the teams that I wanted to cover. If anyone's got any other teams that you want us to have a think about, anyone got any suggestions? No?
No, I think that's all.
Because I think that was the majority of the teams that made big roster changes there are the ones that we've covered. And I'm pretty comfortable with saying that what we've said about all those teams is pretty accurate. No questions in chat for the time being. Mate, obviously, we do all this at the Beyond the Call for you guys. We don't do it for our own personal gain. We have no reason to do it for our own personal gain, besides the fact it wastes all of our fucking time. So, if you wanted to drop a sub or drop a follow or any of the following that you can do, it's really appreciated. We love it if you would do that for us because it gives us a lot of kind of exposure and gives you guys the exposure in return because we do the 1K shows, all these different podcasts and shows and stuff in order to give some kind of precedence and some kind of coverage towards the amateur scene. Doesn't get any naturally, so it means that you guys can get potentially your shot at the CDL as well. So all of that stuff is good for us, all of that stuff is good for you. Make sure that you can get involved with it as best you can by following and doing whatever you want to with the stream. If you want to subscribe, you want to donate, you want to do whatever you want, go for it. But of course, you can follow us on Twitter at BTC_COD. The next thing that we'll be putting out might be Tuesday, depending on what news Chris has from the AM scene. Probably not a fucking lot. I'm thinking about it because of Corona. Probably just be an episode on 1K results, and that might be it if he even does one. If not, then we'll be back on Thursday with the 1v1, and then, of course, we're back on the 4-day stint that we have here at Beyond the Call for Friday, the Brummy Boys, Saturday, the 1K show, and then this again, this time, same time next week. But from us here at the Beyond the Call, guys, we're going to be out of here. We're going to be going to go cast EEG. Our stream will be up shortly, so make sure you go and check on European Esports Gaming TV. And that will be Chris and Connor for the one match that's on tonight. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you later. Have a good night. Stay safe from Corona.